Welcome to today's episode of Inner Peace, Better Health, where we have Dylan Borland, a productivity coach, author, and the mind behind imagination creates reality. Dylan's unique approach blends practical business strategies with timeless spiritual wisdom, helping professionals achieve extraordinary results without sacrificing inner peace. Today, we'll explore how imagination, mindset, and alignment can transform not just your work, but your entire life. Dylan, it's so nice to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here and chat with you. Thank you.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. So, Dylan, you've spent your years mastering both business and spiritual principles, right? How did you discover that imagination can directly shape reality?
That is I will try to answer that question as short as possible. But, it all started when I can kind of give you a little bit of a backstory. It started when I was 16 and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't fall asleep. I kind of have this very high analytical mind that's always going. It's kind of like seeing the world in binary code, right? It's very analytical, always thinking. I can visualize how things work kind of in my mind, but I could never get it to shut off. I could never rest, right? It just was always going. And so I had ran into kind of the beginning of my spiritual journey. I grew up actually in a family that was Catholic. So I studied Catholicism for a little while. And then I just kind of it didn't make sense to me. I knew that there was more. I knew that there was more to the mind and the power of the mind. And so I started witnessing. I actually first dove into some practices of like mostly Zen Buddhism and just kind of learning to meditate and to get my mind to quiet down. And over the years, it took many years to get to a point where I could just almost stop thinking. But it kind of led me on a spiritual path, like probably yourself and many of your listeners, where I kind of branched out in terms of spiritualism. And but I was always fascinated with the power of the mind and what the mind could do, and in particular, the power of the mind when it came to healing. And so over the last, that was 16 years old, and I'm 39 now. So over that time, I've tried many different mind techniques. Some people call it manifestation, whatever you might want to call it. Different elements of religion, as they pretty much all say the same thing. And I remember like 2 years, I studied Christianity quite a bit. And I remember a quote there in scripture that had said something along the lines of like, I think Jesus was saying, you too can do all of these things and more if you have faith. So I kept noticing all of these synchronicities and all these kind of baselines that were talking about the power of the mind. And what is that? I studied methods like, just meditation. I studied methods. You've probably heard of maybe the Silva method. Have you heard of that before? Jose Silva's, he's got a method that he uses for visualization and to bring things to fruition in terms of reality, even aspects of Christianity and prayer. So I wanted to say, what is the root of that all? What is kind of the essence behind what all of these spiritual teachings and practitioners are saying? People like Alan Watts and Wayne Dyer and Ram Dass, all of these names, right? Sadhguru. I don't know if you've heard of Sadhguru before. You probably have, right? Yeah. And so I started to begin to experiment in my own life with the power of the mind and what's really happening. And it kind of led me to boil it down. And I'm just giving you a kind of a short condensed version here. And I think the guy that had taught me the best was a man named Neville Goddard. He was around from the early 1900s. He also grew up from a Christian Catholic type of background. But he had interpreted scripture in a way much like that quote that I had told you from Jesus, where he had, if you have the power of faith, then you can see it and you can believe it and you can feel it, it will come to you. So I spent most of my life, actually all of my life, experimenting with that and different techniques work and stuff like that. But at its core, I wanted to test it. I actually wrote a book. I always have it here on my desk, and you mentioned it earlier. It's called Imagination Creates Reality. And the reason why I titled it A Self-Experiment in Conscious Creation is because don't just listen to what I'm saying or what other people are saying. You can test this principle for yourself. something that, whether you believe, however you believe or describe God or reality or whatever it might be, the fact of the matter is, when you practice these principles outlined by spiritual teachers, you can absolutely control reality as we know it. You can bring into existence, much like these spiritual teachers are telling you, what it is that you're visualizing. And for me, so much of meditation and manifestation work, you're visualizing, right? But that component that really matters, and like Neville teaches, is you live in the end, almost as if it were a memory. It had already happened, and you attach all of your feelings to it. The feeling is the key, right? It's kind of, I don't know what it's called in masonry. When you do mason work with stones, you have a keystone that kind of holds everything together, right? It's discovered through 25 years of just studying all types of different spiritual work and practices and meditations and you name it, that visualization is not enough. Prayer is not enough. You can see it in your eye, you can see it in your mind, you can see it in your imagination, but when you attach that feeling and you live as if that has already occurred, like many spiritual teachings tell you to do, you live from the end of your wish fulfilled, and you can feel it. You can feel it with all of your senses. You can see it with your eyes. You can taste it. You can hear it. You can touch it. And if you continue to hold that state long enough, it does come to be. And so that, as a human being, you must stop and ask yourself, what is that? What is happening there, right? And so when you can repeat it, I'm a high analytical person. I like to run experiments in my life. And you can repeat it over and over and over again with a certain set of framework, and you can keep getting results. Then you have to ask yourself, what's happening there, right? And that's why I say, like, we can talk on this podcast about how imagination shapes and creates your reality. I encourage people to follow the practices and the principles at their simplest and experiment from themselves and just see you can do it. What we're discussing, you can bring to existence. And then what does that tell you about life itself? If our mind is so powerful, right? And our thoughts can shape, they can heal us. They can heal our bodies. They can do all types of things, whether you're just going to a grocery store and trying to manifest a parking space. A lot of people start with small, right? What is happening? So for me, the evidence of the fact that your imagination creates reality, when you attach those feelings to it and you live as if it's already occurred, and in the end, and you watch it come into existence time and time again, that's why I'm passionate about teaching people the power of your imagination to shape your reality. And Alan Watts described many times, if you've ever listened to Alan Watts and his work, life is almost like a dream, right?
Yeah.
So there's so many times where you go to bed at night and you wake up in the morning and you ask yourself, did that actually happen? You felt it. Your heart was racing, your mind was racing, your body was racing. So what's happening there, right? So that's kind of a 10,000 foot overview. But, I've spent all of my life just experimenting with this principle and then being able to get it down to its core essence where you can and anybody can go through it. That's why I titled the book a self-experiment, because anybody can test what it is that we're discussing and see for themselves. It's really fascinating.
Yes, and one thing that I go by is the best answer to a question is the answer that one gives to themselves. I feel like they can they can get guidance, true, but they need to customize it to their own needs, and that answer is something that comes from their own insights, I feel like.
Absolutely.
And this whole concept of imagination having the ability to directly influence our reality is very interesting to me, because I'm an imaginative person myself. So I imagine all the time what kind of life I want to have. But sometimes I feel like maybe I'm wasting my time imagining stuff. So if you can share a personal moment where this concept of imagination shaping our reality that changed you as a person, or helped you reach goals? What would you say to our listeners?
Well, I've got, I treat my entire life as one big experiment, as one big imagination experiment, right? And so I want to take a step back and just say it's not enough to visualize. And I think, all my time in Christianity and all my time in Catholicism and other spiritual work, visualizing is one thing, but the missing component, that keystone component, was you have to feel it with all of your senses. You have to feel it. And that's the piece that brings it together. And I'll give you some examples. I've got every week, every day, I have examples. But my biggest thing that I ever came in life with the power of my imagination so far has been I had actually a collapsed L4 and L5 disc in my back. So your lower back. I had x-rays taken, and my disc were basically bone on bone. And I couldn't sneeze, or I would involuntarily fall down. If I moved the wrong way, I would fall down because it's all your nerves in that back. And so I had to sleep in a beanbag chair for close to a year. But at this point in my life, this was probably 5 years ago already, I very much knew and had instilled in me this concept of visualization and imagination and seeing myself healed. And so for every night for a year, I would imagine myself healed. I would imagine my discs growing back. I would see and feel myself playing with my son and playing baseball and playing soccer and hear the words and hold him and hug him and just see those discs growing back. And it took me about a year, but through that process that we're describing, I actually grew my discs back in my spine. And I also use some herbs. I do a lot of holistic healing and stuff like that. So I used herbs to support it, and some oils and some nutrition and things like proper nutrition, right? But through that visualization process, I grew my discs in my low back from bone on bone to healthy discs, which are like 11, 12, 13 millimeters. And here I am sitting here today, and there's been many, many examples of that. And I was fascinated with that idea following a person called Joe Dispenza. And Joe Dispenza teaches a lot of this work and this healing with your mind because I think he got ran over by like a car on his bicycle and was paralyzed and used visualization and the power of the mind to heal himself. He's a real life example of that. And so and you have these experiences and you realize how powerful your mind is. But where most people stop, and like Neville Goddard says in his books, is you have to ignore reality. You have to ignore this waking moment where you're like, and I say it in my book so many times, right? What happens when you feel like you said earlier, it's not working? You go back to that space, you go back to that visualization, and you trust, not with your eyes, not with your senses here around us. It might not look like it's working. It might not look like what is happening, but there's always a delay between what it is that you're visualizing and what's actually coming into existence. So you don't concern yourself with the timing of it, right? You don't have to know how it works. You don't have to know how it's going to come to be. You just have to hold that thought, that intention, that feeling of that wish already being fulfilled. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. And it's really fascinating that mindset isn't just like a theory subject, but a practical, practical experience, I can say.
Sure.
Right. You have to put it in your life and just don't question yourself, I feel like. And
Yes.
one should stop questioning themselves and start questioning what they did, their steps, so that they can understand what kind of mistake happened at what position, what time, and maybe replace it with another step and do if the outcome helps and see if the outcome helps or not, I feel like. Right?
Well, I give you a powerful, just to kind of sum it up, I'll give you a technique. The idea is, let's give you an example. Let's say you wanted to have a new job and you wanted to earn more. You would take yourself and visualize in your mind just a very short scene of you not going through the process of getting a job. So ignore the interview, ignore the conversation with the employer. No, you have to create a short scene in your mind that implies you already have that job. And so it might be something as simple as a phone conversation with a friend that says, hey, Rebecca, I'm so excited. I got that new job that I always wanted. And hearing her in your mind saying, congratulations, and then looping that, right? And then feeling, how does that make you feel? That sense of relief. I got a higher paying job. I can hear I can hear my friends' voices in my mind, in my ears, right? I can hear that. Your only job is to hold that short clip in your mind, despite what the whole outer world is saying to you.
Yeah.
But if you to hold that loop and loop that in your mind, and the most powerful time to do it is as you're going to sleep, because your mind's entering that relaxed state. You're getting into your subconscious mind. And if you continue to hold that state, you don't need to know how. You don't need to concern yourself with the time. You don't know how it's going to come to be. You don't have to concern yourself with that. All you have to do is hold that little loop and that feeling in your mind until it comes to be. And it will come to be. It will absolutely come to be. And if it hasn't come to be yet, there's something in your mind that's creating doubt. You don't believe it yet. There's a block in your mind that says, is this really possible? And that's why we encourage people, even in the book, to start with small things and small experiments that you can experience that this concept is true and it's possible, right? So, yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, and I also love how you're saying to intersect feelings and imagination, right? And also, one thing I really find interesting about your work is that it goes even deeper. You connect imagination itself to spiritual principles. So let's talk about that. In your book, you talk about the intersection of imagination and spiritual principles. I feel like the imagination alone is not enough to create real change. And it requires the perfect combination of consistent action with it, right? So what do you feel about that?
Well, if you study a lot of the world's religions and a lot of the religious principles, it kind of boils down to one thing. And I like to look at whatever your belief is in God, there's something there, right? There's something that's happening. There's some kind of energy. There's some kind of existence that's occurring. And so for me, it starts with the belief that, you look at what is God. To me, you look at God is creation. Look at all of creation, right? God is a creative being. We as human beings are creative beings. And the mechanism God is expressing his creation, especially in this human form, is through this imagination. Everything that we have today, if you think about it, has come through imagination. That microphone that you're talking into, somebody saw it in their imagination. It came to be. This podcast that we're on today, we saw this in our mind. It came to be. And so what's happening there? And when you talk about blending it with spiritual principles, the idea that one of the challenges that I have with some religious teachings is they try to separate you from God. And I just don't believe that to be the case. I believe that the essence of God is within us. And we have Scripture, even Christianity says, I and my Father are one. You can do all of this. Jesus himself saying, you can do all of this, all that I do and more, right? So what is he saying? He's saying the temple is within. And I reference Scripture a lot, just because I spend a lot of time studying Scripture. I don't reference it, in any other capacity. But, what is happening there? What are they trying to tell you? What is Hinduism trying to tell you? What is Buddhism trying to tell you? What is Christianity trying to tell you? What are all of these religious teachers trying to tell you? Even the ones that aren't dogmatic in terms of religion, they're trying to say that you are God at his core, creating.
Yeah. Yes, true.
It's all creation. It's all imagination. And you are God creating. You are God imagining. And this is your tool to do it. Your biological tool to do it.
I agree with you. And I also believe that God is everywhere in myself, in the person I'm speaking into. We just have to see it. We have just to believe it. And also, I believe that innovation is directly linked to imagination. But
Yeah.
sometimes I also wonder people get so immersed in imagination that they don't know where to start. They don't start the consistent steps that they need to start to make that imagination, to make that dream come into reality. So, and I feel like most of the listeners find that common with me. So if you can tell them if there is any balance, how to balance this imagination and trying to put that into your reality, what would you tell them?
Well, that's a good question, right? And that's why this book is so short. It's only 39 or so pages because it's not fluff. It's practical steps to follow to test this principle for yourself. That's why it's called the self-experiment in conscious creation. But the easiest thing I can say is pick one thing and start small. In the book, we talk about the ladder exercise, right? And we say to yourself in that exercise, let's test this concept of conscious versus subconscious and who's in control. And so you go around your home and you put sticky notes everywhere that says, I will not climb a ladder. Okay. But then you go to bed at night and you visualize yourself climbing a ladder. And you do this for a couple days. And then what happens is at some point in the next week or 2 weeks, there's something that occurs that involves you climbing a ladder in some capacity. So it's a very small step to understand the power of who's in control. And this is that subconscious, right? But from there, the easiest thing you can do is I tell people, pick one thing that you want after you do that experiment and you see kind of what's happening, right? Because that's kind of a low-hanging, easy experiment for a lot of people to do. But once you do that, pick a goal in your life that would make a difference, whether it's in your business or your personal life, or maybe a relationship that you want to improve, or something that you want to bring about that's going to make a change in the next 90 days. And focus on that one thing. I think, we all want to do a lot of different things and we want to bring this into existence and that into existence. Pick that one thing that's going to make the biggest difference on your life or a relationship or your job or whatever it might be, and create that short scene in your mind that implies that it's already done, like what we talked about earlier. It could just be a phone call to a friend that says, hey, I got that job, and that friend saying to you, congratulations. Hearing that and looping that. And all you have to do is continue to maintain that thought and that feeling in your mind. It comes to be. And the best time to do that is as you lay down and go to bed, because that's when you enters those states of deep relaxation and you get into that subconscious space of your brain where all of this magic, let's call it whatever, right? All of this actually begins to occur. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I feel like it is a very crucial point right now because you're telling us that execution is as important as imagination, right?
Well, so help me understand what you mean by execution, like just taking steps on,
Yeah.
like what are you referring to?
Yeah, for me, I'm a musician basically. So I imagine myself in the studio producing stuff, composing stuff, right? So I make steps. So from now on, I'll start reading music theory. I'll go for jazz. I'll start doing piano, and I write steps for that in order for me to get into that studio. So I'm imagining myself in a studio, and for that to happen, I'm executing the steps that I need to for that
That's
to happen.
exactly. Yes, that's exactly it. And there's an old quote, I can't remember it right now, but in essence, it says exactly what you're talking about. You have to take action. You have to take action, meaningful action towards your goals and your desires every day. You can't sit around under a tree and imagine all day long and have it show up, right? So you have to, in addition to your imagination and the feelings, you say to yourself, what practical step would I take? So if I'm trying to get a job, I'm not just going to imagine. Now, is it possible? Absolutely, right? I mean, there's many times where you think to yourself, wow, this opportunity just appeared out of nowhere in my inbox. That happens. But you also have to apply action, and that will help accelerate the process. So if we use the job example, or like your recording studio, you're going to take practical steps. Like I might go and apply to one new place every day as I continue to hold imagination in my mind. So yes, you're taking action, you're taking practical steps, you're keeping this, loop in your mind, and you're bringing it into existence. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I also believe that this balance between imagination and execution is really important when we're talking about mental health awareness, right? Because in today's high performance culture, burnout and stress are almost seen as badges of honor. See, Dylan, in this kind of society where stress and burnout are rampant in entrepreneurial life, how does aligning productivity with inner peace actually help in sustaining long-term health?
That's exactly why I designed the work that I do. It's called Aligned Productivity, because I was a product of this culture of fear, this fear-based culture, this control the resources, survival of the fittest, Wolf of Wall Street, sell everybody everything, and this fear-based culture. And when you start to implement some of the spiritual practices that we're talking about, and you get that inner peace and you do the real inner work, which is not sexy, it's hard, it's difficult, right? To turn inward. You can't find, as you can't find peace out there. It all starts within and how you think about everything, right? So if you don't have peace, you got to do a self-check. But I was a product of that culture my whole life, and I said, there's got to be a better way. I stressed myself out so much that I was bleeding internally. Like it was so much stress and chaos in my life for my work. And I said, I can't do that. And so let me begin. I had read a book from, I think it was the Tao Te Ching or something along those lines. I was inspired through Wayne Dyer. And it basically said, look at all of nature. The birds don't struggle to fly. The birds don't struggle to find food and eat. They're just birds. They just show up every day. And so the idea was, let me try to get in alignment with the natural order and the natural flow of things. So instead of forcing things to happen, instead of forcing obstacles moving out of my way, let me surrender to the flow and be like water and be fluid. Life and in my business. And the moment that I really embraced that concept, my whole life changed. Things began to come to me instead of me forcing and pulling and trying to carve my way to get what it is that I want. And so for me, even in holistic health and in my work and in my business, I look to how do things just occur in nature? How do things just like nature's not struggling? Nature just is. It's being, it's flowing, it's in alignment with how things are. Right. And so I look at it in that capacity and moving away from that fear-based mindset. And in the reason why so many of us are in that fear-based mindset, in my opinion, is because we are separated from who we really are, right? We don't understand that we are God, that we are internal, that we are never ending. We are so into our bodies and our physical bodies and survival as a human being that we resort to animalistic, a lot of times, practices of survival. These are all my nuts. I'm going to eat them all. You can't have any. This water, you can't have any, because we have forgotten. And this is what Scripture says: you have to be born again. We have forgotten who we are. We have disconnected ourselves so much from God, from Source, which always provides if you just relax. That we are so into these bodies and into our mind and into this biological experience that we can't help ourselves but to operate from fear, a lot of us. And so that spiritual work and that inner work is remembering at the end of the day who you are.
Yeah.
And I remember reading Eckhart Tolle's book probably a decade ago, The Power of Now. And he said one thing in there. He said, stop for a moment and say something to yourself in your mind. Let's do that now for a second. Just say a sentence in your mind. So you heard that, right? And you heard, but you didn't speak. But you heard what you heard in your mind. And who is that heard that? That is the real you. That is the
Mm.
God, source that is within you.
Mm.
And so for me, that was a powerful kind of, it made me think like, yeah, what is that can hear me
Yeah. Mm.
talking in my mind? That's the real me, not
Mm.
Dylan, not this body. The real me is what heard me talking to myself in my mind. And so I
Mm.
began to investigate that and experiment with that. But all of
Mm.
that to say that, you know, the power of God is within you.
Mm.
And that's
Yeah.
so many spiritual teachers are trying to say.
Mm.
We have
Yeah.
to we have to just simply remember who we are. And then you
Mm.
move away from fear. You move away from scarcity. If you remember that you're God and that this body dies or whatever you want to call it, and
Mm.
you go on, you're eternal. And so what are you worried about? You're just going to the next adventure. You just going to the next journey.
Mm.
So there's no need to worry about what happens to this body. There's no need to
Mm.
live in fear and scarcity, right?
Right.
That's
Right.
kind of how.
And I also believe before doing stuff in the outer reality, one should start trying to understand themselves so they can be the best selves in the reality. And you were talking about nature. I feel like the biggest takeaway that we can learn from nature is that for nature, health and performance are not different things. They are like partners that go hand in hand, right?
Right.
So we must learn from that, and we must understand that what we are doing today, what what we are doing now, is not different from. Uh, we should not differentiate it from being able to be happy or being able to be content with ourselves. But I also think a lot of listeners, this might sound inspiring, but also very abstract, this whole concept. So before we wrap up, let's make it real. What mindset shifts or exercises can help someone experience this alignment for themselves?
Yeah, I think, for me, I'm a big believer in just meditation and just sitting with yourself and feeling,
Hmm.
getting to know yourself, getting to know, to be okay in silence. They always say in so much religion that if you want to know God, sit still,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Hmm.
Sit still. That's why
Hmm.
so many the Native Americans would go out on spirit journeys, right? And they'd come
Hmm.
back changed. Men would come back from this spirit journey changed. And
Hmm.
so, for me, I like to say, so many people are scared to do the inner work. People are
Yeah.
scared to sit with themselves. People are scared to spend time in silence and alone.
Hmm.
But you're really never alone, right? And
Hmm.
so for me, I try to encourage people just to start there, just to sit. And I think in Zen Buddhism, it's called like mindfulness. You're just sitting.
Hmm.
You're sitting with yourself. You're sitting with the energy of all that is. You're sitting with God, and you're quieting this mind. And you're not in your thoughts. You're just hearing the sounds that are around you, the
Hmm.
birds, the bees, the wind, feeling the air, the temperature. The reason why I like people to start there is because it quiets this mind down. It gets
Hmm.
you out of that survival experience. It gets you out of that exterior world and into the world of creation, the world of imagination, right?
Hmm.
And then you can start going and do more inner work, but just getting comfortable with yourself, stillness, silence, and allowing God to speak to you and through you is a place where I like to start. And that's
Hmm.
something anybody can do. Just spend 20 minutes a day in solitude and in meditation and just do mindfulness. Just listen.
Hmm.
Just
Right.
hear. Just feel. Just touch. Just smell. And just let the thoughts pass, come and go,
Hmm.
eat in and out.
Yes.
Don't try to control it. Let them come in and out.
Mm. And it's a kind of really empowering because a transformation and reinvention doesn't start with grandiose or fancy steps, right? It starts with small intentional shifts.
I like to say it starts with awareness because you
Mm.
can't change anything that you're not aware of. If
Yeah,
you don't think you have a problem, where do you start? Right?
yeah, right. Mm.
So I always say that it starts with awareness. It starts
Mm.
with being aware of what it is that you want to change, being aware of the fact that you are not separate from God, that God's energy, God's source, God's vitality, everything flows through you, right? It starts with being awareness of the fact that I want to change, that there must be something better, that all of what I'm doing on the external is not working. So what does that tell you? So unless you're aware, you can't begin to change anything,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So it starts with awareness that you want to change, that you want to do something different, that you want to pivot, that you want to experience something else.
Yes.
Does that make
Amazing. Yeah, it totally does make sense. Especially the part where you said, if you don't know what the problem is, how will you find the solution for it? And I also believe that half of the solution lies in the problem when you understand it.
Yeah.
No, it's really an amazing and insightful session with you, Dylan. And before we wrap up the episode, for the listeners, if they want to connect with you, please tell them the ways to do that.
Yeah, the best way, we kind of, the main hub is just going to my website, cadenacademy.com. That's CADEN, cadenacademy.com. And from there, you can branch off into all the resources that we have. You can explore the imagination creates reality. You can do the experiment yourself. I think that would be a wonderful thing for your listeners. If you go to the website, you can get a copy for free, a digital copy for free. So it's not even any cost. Or you can buy the actual hard copy if you choose to. But then there's many free resources on there. You can join our Inner Edge community, so you can interact with me. It's a free group on Facebook. And so that would be a place for listeners to go and join and collaborate and ask questions. Hey, I heard what you said. How do I do this? How do I do that? I'm trying to focus on this. And you can post and comment in there. And so that would be a great thing to do as well. So, but it all starts at cadenacademy.com. You can get access to everything there.
Yes,
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, sure, of course. Anything for our listeners. Yeah, amazing. And to our listeners, every detail about the ways to connect with him will be in show notes. So please do check that. So yes, amazing. It was a great, insightful session, I feel like, Dylan. Thank you for opening our minds to the power of imagination and alignment. For our listeners,
I'm really excited to see what comes to be. So I want to see the comments on your podcast. I want to see people commenting how powerful their imagination are. That would be wonderful.
Yeah. We'll see the power of community. We'll see the power of imagination, I believe.
Thank you.
Yeah. For our listeners, remember, productivity isn't about doing more. It's more doing what matters while staying true to yourself. Start small, experiment, and watch how your imagination begins to shape your reality. Thank you, listeners. This has been your host, Charu, and the show was Inner Peace, Better Health, where peace is power and overthinking is overrated.